What you are about to hear is not a mere internet legend, a creepypasta, or a simple bedtime story designed to give you a fleeting chill. This is a comprehensive reconstruction of a digital nightmare, a compilation of logs, encrypted audio transcripts, and frantic diary entries recovered from a corrupted military-grade hard drive. This drive was discovered in an abandoned, unmarked storage unit in Arkham, Massachusetts, in late 2021. It belonged to a man named Elias Thorne. Elias was not a conspiracy theorist, a basement-dwelling ghost hunter, or a man prone to flights of fancy. He was a professional. As a former high-level frequency analyst for a private defense contractor, his entire existence was dedicated to the cold, hard world of signals, waves, and data encryption. He was the man the government called when their secure communications were hit by unexplainable interference. But Elias Thorne disappeared on September 15th, just 3 days after uploading his final, terrified entry to a private offshore server. If you are sensitive to high-pitched frequencies, if you have a history of auditory hallucinations, or if you have ever felt the soul-crushing weight of sleep paralysis, I am giving you a final warning. Turn off this video now. Some doors, once opened by the human mind, can never be closed, and some sounds, once they vibrate through your bones, stay in your blood until the day you die. The story begins in August of 2020. Elias was working a graveyard shift, scanning a decommissioned satellite band that hadn't been used since the late 70s. It was supposed to be a routine cleanup of ghost signals. That was when he stumbled upon a frequency labeled in the deep system as Vocales 9. It wasn't being broadcasted on any standard radio wave. It was buried, almost hidden within the white noise of a localized cellular dead zone in the deepest reaches of the Appalachian Mountains. A place where, according to every map, absolutely nothing should have been transmitting. Elias, driven by professional curiosity, began documenting his findings with a clinical, almost obsessive precision. In his very first log, he noted that the frequency sat at a constant, unwavering 19 Hz. In the world of psychoacoustics, 19 Hz is known as the ghost frequency. It is the exact resonant frequency of the human eyeball. When a person is exposed to it for prolonged periods, their vision begins to vibrate, creating grayscale hallucinations in the periphery of their sight. It triggers a primal biological sense of dread, a fight or flight response with no visible enemy. But as Elias began to run this 19 Hz wave through advanced, multi-layered AI filters, he found something that defied every law of physics and biology he had ever studied. Within that wave, buried under layers of subharmonic distortion, there was a rhythmic, wet, and sickening pattern. It wasn't the rhythmic pulsing of a machine, and it wasn't the chaotic static of the universe. It was the sound of something breathing. It was slow, it was heavy, and it sounded impossibly, terrifyingly large. By the second week of his private investigation, the clinical, detached tone of Elias' logs began to fracture like thin ice. He had moved his heavy, expensive equipment from the secure facility to his own home basement, claiming the office environment was too contaminated by background noise to hear the subtleties of the signal. He was retreating. Isolation was setting in. He began writing about a phenomenon he termed the latency. He claimed that after listening to the raw, unfiltered audio of Vocales 9 for more than 4 or 5 hours a day, his very perception of physical reality began to desync from time itself. In his journal, he described dropping a glass of water in his kitchen and watching it hover in the air for a fraction of a second too long, only to hear the sound of it shattering on the floor a full second after he saw it hit. The world was lagging. The physical universe was stuttering. But the sound was always perfectly on time. He began to fear that the frequency wasn't just a sound wave, but a parasite that was slowly rewiring the way his brain processed the passage of time. He felt like he was becoming a ghost in his own life, a delayed shadow moving through a world that had already moved on. The true terror, however, didn't stay confined to his ears or his perception of time. It manifested in his own reflection. Elias wrote in his journal, with handwriting that was becoming a jagged, frantic, unreadable mess, that his reflection looked exhausted. He claimed it was no longer just a mirror image, but a separate, sentient entity that was growing weary of the effort required to mimic his every move. One night, he wrote about staring into his bathroom mirror for over an hour, paralyzed by a sudden, gut-wrenching realization. His reflection had stopped smiling when he did. It just stood there, cold, hollow, and vacant, simply waiting for Elias to blink so it could move on its own. He started covering every mirror in his house with black cloth, but he could still feel the eyes behind the fabric. He could feel his own image watching him from the dark side of the glass, waiting for the moment the synchronization finally broke completely. Elias was no longer alone in that basement, even though every door was deadbolted and every window was nailed shut from the inside. He began hearing a voice, not through the air, not through the speakers, but vibrating directly inside his jawbone. It was a metallic, grinding hum that formed words he could feel in his molars, a resonance that made his teeth ache and his skull throb. He gave it a name: the broadcaster. In his logs, he claimed the broadcaster wasn't speaking to him, but rather through him, using his body as a biological antenna. On the night of September 12th, Elias recorded what would be his final audio log. The quality of that tape is enough to make the blood in your veins turn to ice. In the background, beneath the sound of his shaky, panicked breathing, you can hear a rhythmic, wet, thumping sound. It sounds exactly like someone dragging a heavy, soaked carpet across a wooden floor. Slowly, methodically, coming closer with every agonizing second. Elias whispers into the microphone, his voice a broken thread. It wasn't a signal. It was never a signal. It was a beacon. He realized in those final, dark moments that he wasn't analyzing the sound. The sound had been analyzing him. It was using the 19 Hz frequency to map his physical environment, using sonar-like vibrations to feel the grain of the wooden walls, the clutter on his desk, and the exact, rhythmic pulse of his own heart. The signal had built a perfect map of his world, and now it was stepping out of the frequency and into the room. The official police report, which remains heavily redacted to this day, is a document of pure, unadulterated nightmare. When Elias' sister, Sarah, finally convinced the local authorities to break down the door after 3 days of total, deafening silence, they found a scene that defied every law of nature. The front door was locked with the deadbolt and a heavy security chain. Every window was sealed from the inside. The air in the basement was freezing. The temperature was officially recorded at 4 degrees below zero, despite the fact that it was a sweltering, humid Massachusetts summer night outside. But Elias Thorne was gone. In the center of the basement floor, his clothes were found. His flannel shirt, his jeans, his socks, and even his watch, all folded with terrifying neatness on the floor. They were arranged in a seated position, as if a person were still wearing them, but the body inside had simply evaporated into thin air. There was no struggle, no blood, no sign of forced entry. The only thing left was a shadow. It wasn't a shadow cast by any object or any person in the room. It was a permanent, scorched mark burned into the drywall, a silhouette of a man with elongated, spindly, impossibly thin limbs, reaching eternally and desperately for the light switch. Since these files were leaked onto the dark corners of the web, several independent researchers and hobbyists who have attempted to reconstruct the Vocali's 9 frequency have reported the exact same symptoms. They speak of a sudden, unexplained chill that descends upon a room. They speak of a persistent, 5-second delay in their own reflections. They speak of the sickening sensation of being watched, not from a corner, not from a doorway, but from the very air directly in front of their faces. As I've been narrating this account to you, I have been playing a low-level digital reconstruction of that 19 Hz frequency beneath the music and my voice. You probably didn't even notice it. You thought it was just atmospheric tension, but your nervous system noticed. Your biological self felt it. Can you feel that slight, localized pressure behind your eyes right now? That tightening in your chest that makes it just a little bit harder to take a full breath? That primal lizard brain instinct screaming at you that someone, or something, is standing exactly 3 inches behind your head just out of your field of vision. My advice to you is as simple as it is urgent. Do not look back. Do not look in the mirror before you go to bed tonight. And whatever you do, do not listen to the silence that follows the end of this video. Because once my voice stops and the music fades to black and the hum of your computer is the only thing left, that is when the broadcaster finally starts to speak to you. And he has been waiting for a long, long time for a new set of ears to call his own. Do you hear it? The silence is getting louder.